In the shadowed corners of forgotten worlds, where reality blurs with nightmare, a cursed artifact awaits. Legends say it was forged in the abyss, where the echoes of madness take form. This artifact, known only in whispers, was said to have been created by an ancient civilization that vanished from history, leaving behind no trace but this relic of pure, untamed evil. For centuries, it lay hidden beneath the earth, its dark power growing as the world above it changed. Empires rose and fell, and the passage of time erased all knowledge of its existence. But the artifact had not been forgotten by the forces that created it. In the void between worlds, it called out, waiting for a soul foolish enough to answer. A young scholar, eager and reckless, discovered this artifact buried deep within ancient ruins. He had spent years searching for it, following the faintest traces in forbidden texts and cryptic maps, ignoring the warnings of those who had come before him. Driven by a thirst for knowledge and a desire to prove himself, he brought the artifact back, unaware of the unspeakable horror that would soon follow. You know, the kind of horror that makes you reconsider that PhD in ancient cursed artifacts. Should have stuck with accounting, buddy. As the days passed, strange occurrences began to unfold. Shadows danced when no light was present. Whispers echoed in the silence, and a growing dread filled the air. The scholar began to notice changes in his surroundings. Objects would move on their own, subtle at first, but growing more obvious as time went on. The air in his study grew colder, and the once comforting silence of the night was now filled with eerie, otherworldly sounds. He couldn't escape the feeling that he was being watched. At night, he would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding, as if something had been standing over him, staring into his soul. His dreams became plagued with visions of otherworldly beings, their twisted forms reaching out to him, promising knowledge. But at a terrible price. He saw vast cyclopean cities under alien stars, where the laws of reality were mere suggestions, and the boundaries between life and death were blurred. Look, when tentacled monsters start offering you wisdom, it's probably time to unsubscribe. The scholar's once sharp mind began to unravel. He found himself losing track of time, unable to focus on his research. He became irritable, snapping at those around him. Though he had isolated himself from most of his peers, his obsession with the artifact grew, as did his paranoia. He started to suspect that the artifact was watching him, influencing his thoughts, pushing him toward madness. He tried to rid himself of the artifact, but it was too late. The curse had already taken hold. His mind began to unravel, reality slipping through his fingers like sand. He could no longer distinguish between the waking world and the nightmarish visions that plagued him. The artifact's power was overwhelming, and the scholar was on the brink of losing himself entirely. One night, the whispers grew louder, commanding him to complete the ritual, to unlock the true power of the artifact. Desperation and madness drove him to obey. He prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary ingredients as described in the ancient texts. The air around him grew thick with the stench of decay, and the room seemed to pulse with a life of its own. He lit candles in a precise pattern, as instructed by the forbidden texts, and their flickering light cast grotesque shadows on the walls. The flames seemed to dance with a life of their own, as if mocking the scholar's attempt to control the uncontrollable. The atmosphere grew heavier with every passing second, and the scholar could feel the weight of his actions pressing down on him. As he began to recite the ancient incantation, the shadows in the room deepened, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to mock him. The air crackled with dark energy, and the scholar could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon him, watching, waiting. The words of the incantation rolled off his tongue, foreign and alien, as if the language itself was never meant to be spoken by human lips. His voice grew hoarse, but he pressed on, driven by the overwhelming need to see the ritual through. The walls seemed to close in on him, The temperature in the room plummeted, and the darkness became almost tangible, wrapping around him like a suffocating shroud. Just as he reached the final verse, his hands trembling, his vision blurring, a sudden noise shattered the tense silence. His cat, oblivious to the terror unfolding around it, jumped onto the table, knocking the artifact to the ground. The scholar stared in disbelief as the artifact shattered. The dark energy that had filled the room dissipated in an instant, leaving behind an almost deafening silence. And just like that, the curse was broken. Turns out, all it took was a clumsy cat to undo an ancient evil. The scholar, now free from the artifact's grip, collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by a mixture of relief and disbelief. Days passed, and the scholar slowly regained his sanity. He reflected on his ordeal, realizing how close he had come to losing himself entirely. The artifact, or what was left of it, had lost all its power. It was nothing more than a pile of broken shards now, harmless and forgotten. The scholar decided to leave the academic world behind. He had seen enough of the unknown, the eldritch horrors that lurk just beyond the veil of reality. He packed his belongings and moved to a quiet, secluded village, where he hoped to find peace away from the haunting memories. But the events of that night never truly left him. He often found himself staring at the night sky, wondering about the ancient forces that had created the artifact. What else had they left behind? What other horrors lay buried, waiting to be discovered? Remember, folks, when dealing with cursed artifacts, always keep a cat nearby. You never know when you'll need a little accidental heroism.